Tootsies.
You're the best
Before I go to sleep.
around. Nothing ever gonna keep you down. You're the best around. Nothing's ever gonna keep me down. You're the best around. Nothing's ever gonna keep you down. You're the best around. Dan Spalding in the squadron. Those snaps are mighty, bro.
Are there other
They rubbing a couple 2x4s together. Can we get it tight on his fingers? Savage, dude.
Tight on his fingers. Are there any other words to that song, or is that it?
There's definitely more words to that tune, but I do not know about them.
Jury's out.
Jury's out on those ones.
Just singing it for Dan Spalding.
We are joined in the studio today by the trail boss himself, Mr. Dan Spalding. This is our fourth attempt.
Nice.
Fourth
What
attempt.
happened?
I don't know. What's crazy is I believe that the audio problems that happen on the podcast have never happened on Live at the Lodge. We've had audio problems, but not the same audio problems. And I think there's ghosts up in this spot.
You said the one word you weren't supposed to say.
Oh, is it going to mess things
Every
up now?
time we say that, we summon him.
Oh, God.
No.
Knock on wood.
Every time.
Should we stop and restart?
No.
Okay.
There's an electrical field around my head
Is there?
that just seems
You got plates in there?
no electrical field.
You don't sound so sure.
Yeah. They're actually called servettes.
Dude, the memory has gotten so bad.
Has it?
Wait, just you guys wait.
Oh,
It's so
man.
great getting old and losing various.
Memory is the first thing to go.
No,
huh?
it's the second thing.
What's first?
Eyesight.
That smile is priceless.
I'm in my just early 30s, and I feel like my memory is shot.
Yeah.
It was sweet though. We watched. Rachel wanted to watch Revenant the other night.
Oh, what a good movie!
Yeah, and that's like I'd seen it like I think I had it on DVD and I watched it several times, maybe 3 times. It's like, oh, okay, I'll watch it again with you, and it starts in. It's like, I don't remember this. I don't remember this either. It was like a whole new film. It's great. So there's advantages.
Like Leonardo's in this?
Yeah. All I remember about it is like this Leonardo and this bear, and it's nasty, and then he has to kind of crawl out of there for a long time, and that's all I remember. I know none of the backstory. Tom Hardy, he's in this film. That's great.
Oh, he's so good.
Yeah.
Who's the youngster, the kid in that? What's his name?
His name's William Portier.
William Poutine?
Portier.
Oh, Portier, like the fighter, Daniel Portier.
I don't know that guy.
Like Sidney
Portier.
Sidney Portier.
I could be wrong, but I think that's his name.
He kills it. He's super
amazing.
good.
Yeah, he's
Great
super good.
actor. Yeah. I need to rewatch that film because I watched like a backstory on. It's based on a true story.
Yeah, this glass guy.
Yeah, but obviously there's indulgences specifically inclined for Hollywood.
The story I read was that actually the actual true story it was based on was actually bloodier and more fantastic.
Really?
Well, they added a lot of stuff like the love interest and the son and all that.
You got to add a love interest.
Yeah, you got to have that.
You got to.
There was a love interest in Revenant?
The bear.
It's rough Congress is what we call that.
Damn.
The bear.
Cinematic masterpiece.
So apparently this guy came off like a ship and it was captured by pirates, and then they gave him the option to either like die with his buddies or become a pirate with them. So he joined up with them for a year, and then they deserted from the pirate ship, and they were giving chase, and he had to navigate various cannibalistic Native American tribes to make it up north, and then he got into this fur trapping, and then the bear. So it's crazy.
They shot that whole movie out in like all the elements. They had to like change locations because it wasn't actually snowing and didn't have snow in one of the areas that they had originally meant to shoot it at.
Where did they shoot it? Montana,
BC.
Wyoming?
No. I don't think it was in.
I think it was BC.
Oh, up in
I think it was
BC?
in Canada somewhere. I don't know.
I just named off like 3 places that I know have
Montana,
snow in them
Wyoming,
every once in a while.
Utah.
Russia? They shot it in Russia, right?
Yeah. Great film.
Super good film. What's your favorite film, Dan? Do you have a favorite film?
Probably not, but I think like being there with Peter Sellers is one of my top 5 for sure. It's
Wow,
always-
I don't even know if I've seen that.
Oh,
Me neither.
brilliant film. Yeah.
Let's put it on our list.
Yeah.
You know what movie I watched last night with my folks and my wife?
What?
Paddington 2.
Oh, nice, dude.
It was so good.
Have you seen the first one?
That little bear gave it to me.
Did you get a couple teardrops?
Yeah, dude, what a positively
see.
awesome movie. And you know who came back and just punched it
Paddington
right in the
2.
kid? Hugh Grant.
Oh.
Just
he's
came
great.
off his little, stint with the prostitutes and
So we're going to talk today about anything to do with bears and Hugh Grant.
Hugh Grant,
because
yeah.
he was in that thing with Nicole Kidman here just recently, and it was, yeah, he killed it in that too.
a movie or a
It was called The Undoing.
The Undoing.
Yeah.
ooh, I never saw this
it's
either.
Kind of a mystery thing.
Dude, Hugh Grant's a
And he's-
savage, bro.
He's sinister in this one.
He's so oh really?
I'm not going to give it away.
Okay.
But he did it.
I can't get him out of my mind.
It was him. Oh, that's funny.
He's always just that Notting Hill guy for me. Cute.
I mean, he's the guy who got arrested for summoning a transsexual prostitute to me.
I didn't even know that.
You didn't know about this?
Hollywood.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
I don't pay attention
Oh,
to
his mugshots.
BuzzFeed.
His mugshot's awesome. It's just like, oh no. Like the look on his face is like, oh no.
You know, they say it's lonely at the top, but every bit of evidence I can find like that is it's not lonely. You always have
I guess.
someone to keep you company.
Yeah.
You got-
That mugshot was just him looking at Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
Across from him.
Yeah. Just waiting in line.
Yeah.
You got any mugshots out in there out in the world, Dan?
Never been arrested.
Never.
Really?
Yeah, never been.
That's pretty
Good
good.
on you. Have you been arrested, Steve?
Never been arrested.
How many times have you been arrested, Jules?
Like 5.
5. Savage, dude. He wins the coin on this one.
Just stupid though. Nothing for any real good reason.
I mean, didn't you climb on top of your high school one time and like
Twice.
sleep overnight there
Yeah, I climbed on top of my elementary school, and then I climbed on top of my high school. I got
while
arrested
you
on my
were
high
in an
school.
elementary?
No.
When you were in high school, you climbed on top of your elementary school?
I had graduated high school, but I was like,
Hold up. You graduated high school and then you went back and climbed on
maybe
top
it
of
was
your
like my
elementary
senior
school?
year. Yeah, it was just like a place to go. It was just we were just camping. We just wanted to like do something stupid.
So that kind of combines camping with park.
Yeah.
Parkour,
We
is
just
that
wanted
what
to
it
like
is?
do something.
Parkour,
That
yeah,
felt,
go, Dan. There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
That's
Yeah.
French for jumping around.
Is it really?
No, I don't know. Parkour. Parkour. I've been arrested, technically, one time. But I never had to go to jail. But I did wore handcuffs and had to sit in the back of a patrol car, and I sobbed. I was sobbing.
Did you?
Yeah.
No, you weren't.
No,
Were you
straight
really?
up sobbing.
Was that the time with you and Brent?
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
were sobbing.
You're
Yep.
tearing up right now a little bit thinking about it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was bad.
Because what were you sobbing for? Because you were afraid you were gonna get in trouble by your parents. Like what was
No,
the, what
no,
was
no.
the cry
I was.
coming from?
I was. It was a feeling of disappointment because I was letting the guys in the band whose
Oh, yeah.
van I was driving down
mm-hmm.
because they had to get theirs. It's a long story. Have I told you this story before, Dan?
Twice on the other 2 podcasts.
Yeah, exactly.
Failed.
Okay, well then, for the folks at home sitting on the edge of their seats, me and a friend drove overnight, 2 nights in a row to get some band equipment to the venue while the band that the band equipment was for was flying, and we brought weed with us. And I know it's a long one. I'm going to shorten it up. Anyways, we got caught with the weed from police officers, and I got handcuffed, thrown in the back of the squad car, and I knew that like I wasn't going to get the equipment there in time. And of course, at this point in my life, I think I was like 21 maybe. I was convinced that like driving this band's equipment to the venue was like somehow going to get me a
Get your
chance
career.
to like have a gig, which is ridiculous.
Maybe it did.
Nope.
No, it didn't.
Nah. Well,
Just got your-
Brian did he produced my first record last
you go.
week, and if I wouldn't have got his equipment there on time,
He wouldn't
I don't
have
know
done.
if he would have. He would have been like, bro, come on.
Shout out to Brian Fennell.
Shout out to Brian Fennell in Barcelona, Rhett Stone Lake, and oh shit, I'm forgetting the guitar player's name.
Bob.
How could I do it? It's not Bob. Definitely not Bob. But Dan, what have you been up to? I know you've been tinkering on cars. You've been building a cabin. You've been learning. You were in our Christmas special. You learned 42 Christmas songs.
Let's really quickly educate the listeners who Dan even is, because he built this whole entire space that we're doing this podcast out of, and he makes it possible for us to do this thing.
Yeah. So this space, as well as many other spaces in the Spokane area, have Dan's fingerprint on them. The Zephyr Lodge is one of those spaces. You brought me out here back in, I think it was 2017 or 16. Dan, do you remember?
Probably 16. yeah.
16, yeah. And you walked me around the premises, and I had this like look on my face like, ooh, you got your work cut out for you, player. And then 2 years later, it's this beautiful space with it's upwards of 20 different rooms for lodging, amphitheater, a beautiful bar. It's like the hippest little hideaway from Liberty Lake.
That was Brittany.
Oh, Brittany trying to get a hold of me. What up, Britt?
How's it?
Dan's like, I'm out.
With that being, yeah, I gotta go. I forgot my train of thought because of that phone call, but
Beautiful space.
yeah, you kind of cultivate and create these really epic spaces, architecturally. You started out though as a painter.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Started out in the junkyard, as we like to say.
Yeah, that's right. You started out. You grew up in a junkyard.
Yeah. Love grease, grease and gears, and then kind of went into the visual arts world, and then kind of branched out into, development.
And what's interesting is
structures
you kind of brought those two worlds together. If, in my personal opinion, the first building that I ever saw you work on, or that I kind of had met you and then seen your fingerprint involved in it, was a building downtown, a wonderful bar called Zola, and you took a lot of things that people might throw away, and you repurposed them and reused them in this space. There's an old sign. I forget what it says, but a big, huge sign hung upside down. It's like a wine rack in there. There's an old like quarter sailboat that's like flipped on its side and cut in half and used as a long bench seat. Like your ability to see things that most people would go, get rid of that, and reuse it and repurpose it, obviously probably comes from growing up in a junkyard.
Yeah, probably.
Who owned the junkyard in your family that you started working?
It's
at?
like
It's a family.
fourth generation.
Really?
My nephews are in there now, so yeah.
Really?
4 generations.
Crazy.
Wow.
Back to the 20s,
No way.
You didn't get any trouble? You didn't get arrested growing up in a junkyard?
Hell
I feel like
no.
that just goes hand in hand.
No, I mean, you have like a never-ending supply of hall passes when your dad has a junkyard.
Really?
Like my high school football coach, like third period one day in his geology class, he goes, "Hey, Spalding, come over here." And he says, "I need a wing bent for my pickup out there." And he
what
sends
are you
me
gonna do for me,
sends me
Coach Nicholson?
Let me start. Coach Schill. Shout out to Bob Schill.
Shut out.
Good guy. But he sends me home like at 10 in the morning on a Tuesday to get a little wing vent for his old Chevy pickup. I go out, bust out, grab a part, come back before the period is out, and I don't know why I'm telling that story. It's just,
I was asking, like, what you.
well, hall passes.
Yeah,
like,
it's amazing.
It's like,
Yeah.
if I remember getting pulled over a number of times when I first got my license, and they'd see my last name, and you have to understand that this is East Valley. If any of you know what this is all about, we're out here in the sticks, and just to give you an idea where the bar was set in terms of status and that sort of thing. I was at the top of the food chain because my dad owned a junkyard. So that was a big deal to most of the kids.
Wow.
Your dad has a junkyard. Take that to Manhattan and see how far it flies.
Yeah, I guess I
Yeah.
just I put it in different contexts because I grew up in like the suburbs and not out in the sticks, and so owning a junkyard, you probably had like a good barter system for yourself going on at some point.
Well, like I said, if I get pulled over, the cop would see my last name. It's like, oh yeah, hey, but slow her down a little bit.
Yeah.
But it wasn't,
Did you like it? Did you appreciate that upbringing? And
No,
being,
not
being
at the
in
time.
there?
I mean,
No.
I totally get it now, but at the time I wanted to just be a kid, and it was just this kind of prevailing work ethic in my family that, like, after school and on Saturdays you came down and you got your little toolbox and you
How old
pulled
were you
parts.
then? Like as early as what?
6,
Really? Wow.
6, 7, yeah, whatever.
God, that's why you got such good work ethic, man. You've been working since you were 6 years old.
Yeah, and
I was
I'm
picking
sure it seems a lot more rigorous as a kid. It was probably a few hours here, a few hours there. It wasn't
I
like
was
we were
picking-
13-hour days in a sweatshop. But
Picking
Right.
poopy wedgies out of my pants when I was 6 years old, dude.
I was
And
doing the same
33.
thing.
And 33.
I was doing the same thing with one hand, and the other hand had a wrench. And
Yeah,
laying
well, yeah.
on my back in the wet snow, pulling somebody's wiper motor.
What do you think the greatest, one of the greatest cars ever built was? Like the mechanisms of the motor vehicle, you're pretty familiar with. I'm
the
not.
Datsun 240Z was just an amazing little sweet spot of affordability and amazing technology, and for what it was.
What happened to Datsun?
They became Nissan.
They became Nissan.
They-
Okay.
it was probably already Nissan, but they rebranded it in the late 70s.
Is
early
Nissan,
80s.
is that Japanese or Korean?
Japanese?
Japanese. We had a Datsun. My dad, I don't know what the model was, but he had a Datsun, a gray wagon, gray Datsun
Could
wagon.
have been a 510. That was also an amazing vehicle.
Maybe it was,
Yeah.
but it sat in our backyard for, from the age of 7 till I graduated high school. Just sat back there. And my dad was always just like, kind of the age-old story. I'm going to fix that someday. I'm going to get my tools together. I'm going to fix that thing. And, man, it sat back there. It never rusted. Like, it was amazing how well it stayed in shape through all of the winters in Chewelah. But
I'm going to bet that was a Datsun 510 wagon. Awesome little cars with independent rear suspension on a cheap Japanese station wagon. Just, mind-blowing.
Hey, Dan, I got a question for you.
Go ahead.
Could you explain half cars to me? Because if you've ever driven through, like, northern Texas, there's a bunch of those, Datsun 510s or whatever in people's backyards next to the rusted out playgrounds.
Uh-huh.
Half cars. What's the deal with these half cars that people just have? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Nope.
they're like,
Perfect.
They look like hatchbacks.
They're like
they're
chopped in
literally
half?
chopped in half. Like,
Probably-
people just have, like, the front of a car on their lawn.
Probably just for parts, Steve, I would guess.
They just cut the ass off and reattach it to something.
No, they probably just kept the good half of a car around for harvesting parts. I have
Interesting.
no idea what you're talking about.
is there ever in the
Never
junkyard
been to northern
Half
Texas.
cars. Like, I should know what that phrase means.
Literally.
half car? You're talking about a Geo Metro, right? Your brother is essentially running Spalding junkyards right now, correct? Your brother Russ.
Yeah, don't let Russ hear you call it a junkyard, though.
Oh, I'm sorry. Pull and save, or what is he?
Well, that's just they call it a wrecking yard or
Wrecking yard,
salvage yard.
Salvage yard. Okay. He's currently in charge of it and running it.
Yeah.
Sweet man. We've done a bunch of music videos out at Spalding's Pull and
Wrecking
Save
yard.
wrecking yard, and they have this machine that will smash a car in like 15 seconds. You just put a car in there and just smashes it. When you were coming up in the junkyard, do you ever remember a moment where you were like blown away by a piece of machinery?
Not really, because I was around it ever since I can remember. I mean,
Yeah.
I just, you know.
Did you ever see some sketchy business happening with people coming trying to like get rid of their cars? Like I'm thinking Breaking Bad right now when he's trying to like get his RV smashed because he's selling drugs out of it, and people. Did you ever know
No,
anything like that going on?
The state of Washington's pretty tight with
Yeah.
with their kind of their what do you call it, regulation on what can happen, because a little crack in that door can go pretty wide in terms of chop shops and cars getting stolen and the parts being resold and getting rid of something to do with any kind of crime like that. So no, I didn't. I mean, I'm sure there was at some
you just
point, but
didn't
I never
know.
saw it.
Yeah.
You know.
Interesting.
But my father was always really like, he's that guy who pays every dime of his taxes, plays by all the rules. Just a really upfront guy. I'm not that guy. I will, I'll cut a corner here and there if I can, but that's just me.
Yeah. Needless to say, you became pretty savvy with automotives and tools as a youngster, and then came up to get involved in art. How did those things coincide?
Yeah, when did that happen? When would that
Well, as a kid, I could, I was always like the best drawer in the class. I had a facility for kind of spatial things and drawing, which isn't really art. It's just a facility, and as Al will tell you, I mean, just because you can sing doesn't make you a great artist. It means you can hold a note and hear where you're at pitch-wise, but that doesn't make you an artist. That just means you have a tool. So
Sure.
really, so I always knew I had that kind of that facility, but I never really, I was growing up in the 80s, so it was all about money and status and cars and houses, and that was the thing. It was a whole different mindset back then. That was everything.
That's still the thing for
well,
some people.
it can be, but I think there's I've seen 6 generations that have come around since then who have this whole other appreciation for things in life that are more important and more real. So, which is refreshing. I mean, that'll always be alive, and greed is, and all that is nothing new. It'll always be around, but it's just kind of the pendulum swings probably. In the 80s, man, it was like, it was everything they show you in the movies. Or
Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
So anyway, once I got kind of past my little taste of that, I remember being 25 and just going, "There's got to be something better than this."
Because
This is all there is.
You were just a money hungry guy at that
No,
point.
I
You were
wasn't
just-
money hungry. I kind of wanted to live that life, and
Yeah.
money's the way you got that. But,
Sure.
but once I kind of got just a foot in the door, it's like, this. I don't want to head down this road any further. I get it. It was fun for a minute, but by the time I was 25, I was like over it. So then I kind of took a time out and moved to Australia, and then kind of got thinking about, did some journaling and thought about what I really want to do, and that was one of them, the visual arts. I was come back and explore that. So that's what I did.
Where'd you go when you moved to Australia? Where'd you live?
I posted up in a place called Coolangatta, which is
Yeah.
on the
You know it, Alan?
I've heard of it. I've heard the name. I couldn't point
it's
it
on
out on
the
the map.
border between New South Wales and Queensland. It's kind of right where the water starts to get warm.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a good place to be.
And was it what brought you down there? Surfing or beaches?
Yeah, I just want to learn how to surf.
Yeah.
So I bought a car and a surfboard. And I didn't know at the time that the surfboard I bought was way too small for a guy my size.
Those are hard to ride when they're small.
Yeah, they're almost impossible.
Yeah.
Especially when you're learning.
We
Yeah,
went
totally.
We went surfing. Me and Taz got married twice, technically. So we got married in a very small ceremony right before Christmas because we were sort of afraid that Taz's grandmother was going to pass away and wasn't going to make our big celebration wedding. And also we needed time for our immigration papers to go through. And Dan had come to Australia. Dan and his partner Rachel had come over to Australia with us during that time, and we went surfing.
Oh, jeez.
I'd never surfed before, but Dan had done it. And Dan comes up from the shore with just this gash. And was it your forehead?
Yeah.
Just this gash in his forehead coming down. I'm like, bro. Kind of from far away, I was like, whoa, dude, Dan got burnt. I was like, how did he get so burnt so fast?
Bleeding.
And, yeah, you popped off your board. That board came back and whacked you in the noggin.
Yeah.
It was pretty.
Yikes.
You know how in the
great.
movies when they get the wound and it never heals, it's still bleeding right now. You see that?
Nice, dude.
It's still up there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Damn,
it was a good
boy.
one.
Damn.
That was a good whip. But, yeah, Dan was at our ceremony. He was our
first.
witness.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah, it was really special.
Nice.
And
man.
so you're 25. You move to Australia. You decide, hey man, there's more than just
Party all
Sex,
the time.
drugs, and
LA
rock and roll.
LA looks and cocaine.
Yeah.
And what got you connected to painting? Because you are an unbelievable portrait painter.
I owe all of that and more to a guy named Bob Gilmore, who was a art instructor at Gonzaga University for 50 years, and he recently passed away maybe 4 years ago.
Shout out to the Zags, #1 in the
Yeah,
country
how
right
about
now,
that?
baby.
Bob had a lot to do with that too. He was a huge basketball aficionado.
Really?
Had met Bob
Cool.
Cousy, like from Boston, and we would sit down and we would talk about two things. One would be painting, and that would take about 10% of our time, and then the other 90% was basketball, because we were both big basketball fans.
Mm-hmm.
But he was had this immense knowledge of basketball, and we would analyze these teams, because this has been going on for 21 years now, since Dan Munson and Mark Few kind of came in, and they were the architects of this whole new GU regime.
Mm-hmm.
And what an amazing story that is. But Bob would, we would sit down and analyze what's going on with the teams and the players and what they need to do. And the guy was always spot on. I went out and made the mistake of playing horse with this guy once. And he was, 30 years my senior. And I'd just then gotten into basketball, and I thought I was pretty good. And he goes, hey, let's go play some horses. That's what he called it, horses.
Did you add an extra S at the
He
end?
did. Yeah. So
It's like, you got a horse. Well,
no,
that's
we
horses.
need one more letter. But we go out there, and this guy, did not miss. He was about 5'4" and could shoot from anywhere and make it. All this old school set shot, but amazingly accurate. And hadn't played in, God, I don't know how long, but
Did he bank everything?
some of them. But when he did, he meant to.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
dad.
Jeez.
We'll get together during Thanksgiving holidays. My dad shoots it. The one leg up, like the Pistol Pete, the one leg up from the hip, and he'll rock. 3/4 court. Bank it.
Yeah.
He looks at me and goes, "Yeah, I missed it so far. I made it." Asshole dad. So Bob Gilmore
Yeah.
is a mentor of sorts that gets you into portrait painting.
Yeah, he was, what he didn't get me into portrait painting. He was just showing me how shit should get done and what to think about, and gave me a philosophy and so many things that we don't have time for. But I owe this guy so much for just it was just this higher level of thinking and responsibility. Take some shit seriously. A lot of stuff you can let go, but there are certain things you just need to keep precious and dear.
Yeah, what were some of those things you would say that he instilled in your, at least in the creative process?
First thing that comes to mind is just being authentic. Don't try to fake it. You know this from singing, because if you're putting on someone else's deal, it shows through. You got to be yourself. You have to be authentic. You have to be real at all times in that process. And the minute you stray from that, it shows up. Does that make sense?
Totally, man. I listen to a lot of recordings that I've made in my life, and some of them make my head go like this because I know that I wasn't being fully authentic or fully me. I maybe let a little bit go in moments where, you let specific opinions kind of come through your orbit and find their way into your universe, and those opinions make sense, right? Like you can kind of rationalize anything, I think, as a creative person. I can personally. I see how that might work. I see how that has worked for somebody else, but man, you feel it. Me personally, when I listen back to a recording that is not fully authentically me, I feel it in my bones, just like, this is not. It's weird. It's weird. And the funny thing is that there's only so many people who can also feel it. Like people who are really close to me will listen to a tune, that I've done that's not fully authentic Al, and they do the same thing. Mm-hmm. But yet people who don't know me personally, don't know me very well, they can't tell the difference.
Well, isn't it interesting though that you can in the creative arts you can get by with being inauthentic. You can get by not being full. Like in order to be an athlete, you have to be the greatest there is to participate,
right?
To play.
Yeah.
In the creative world, you don't. And yes, you want to be as authentic as you can be, but you don't necessarily have to succeed. So you have to make the choice to be the authentic version of yourself, to give your truest self to the thing, to the craft that you're pursuing. So you had to make that choice at some point in your life, correct? And this is what Bob Gilmore apparently instilled in you.
This is the big crossroads you're going to run into no matter what you're doing. If it's acting, if it's making music, if it's the visual arts, whatever it is that's creative, it's not quantifiable. You can't say I put up 40 points last night.
Right.
Yeah.
There's not. What you have is your own barometer in all this. And a quote comes to mind. I can't remember where I got it, but it was, no one ever went broke underestimating the tastes of the American public. So you can probably get rich a couple easy ways. One is robbing banks, and the other is just doing kind of an okay job at whatever, writing a half-ass song that is going to sell, or
right.
And I was actually on a path of illustration for a minute back in the day when I first got started, and Bob pulled me aside one day and goes, "Hey," he goes, what you're doing is great. Those are really fine illustrations, but that's commercial, and there's a difference. And you may not know it now, but you're not going to be able to rinse off the smell of that when you go to do your other work. It's going to, you creatively get just confused, and you don't remember where you are, who you are, because you're spending part of your time and part of your headspace is spent doing something that's going to get you money, and you're doing it for someone else. And he had what was called the golden triangle. That was that was your easel, your palette, and your own head, and your own eyes. And he says, don't let anybody in there inside that triangle. He goes, because if you're thinking about, like I had a gallery owner once that said, but I can't sell green paintings. No one buys green. So I can't make a green painting now. The last show I hung was all portraits, and the guy called me back after a studio visit, and he actually came into the studio, and I was getting the show ready, and I had dozens of paintings, but they were all portraits, and he goes, I can't sell portraits. And I said, well, that's what I have, But if you're, if that's the influence you're allowing into that equation, then you're kind of doomed in a certain way. So
yeah,
I feel for musicians because I see so many of them around here especially. There's amazing talents and really extraordinary people with such great gifts. And I can just see them torn all the time between trying to make a go of it, but they want to be compensated. And my answer is always the same. It's like, if you let compensation, if you're trying to make music your livelihood, that's a really tough go. And I think Al could spend a couple hours telling you about that.
Yeah.
It's not easy. And you're the one in the million who's actually kind of gotten over a certain hump there, but it's never easy, and it's never a done deal.
No.
It's a you get up every day and it's get to work.
Yeah, but that's anything too. I mean, I don't think anything's a done deal.
So the upshot of that is, Bob told me, he says, if you're going to be a painter, if you're going to be a real artist, screw all that. So you keep that over here and you make your money somewhere else. So that's what I did. I started buying real estate and I had this nice passive income after a while that allowed me to focus on painting when I was painting and not worry about having to sell it.
Yeah.
So
cool.
So when you started to understand that, did it change your approach to the craft, or did it change your attitude to the craft, or both?
Oh, hard to say what it would look like without it, but I'm pretty certain it's a whole different animal because of that.
Yeah,
You probably weren't far enough down the path of making a living off your art to really see the contrast.
And
right?
it's so alluring to you sell your first couple paintings or songs or whatever it is, and it feels so good to be validated that way, and you want to go to your Thanksgiving with your family and say, I sold a bunch of paintings and I'm a pro now and I'm making it, and everybody wants that,
right?
And that's, I think, a big part of the carrot that sits out there. But really, if you're in it for the long haul, you wouldn't listen to that, and you wouldn't be trying to achieve that. You'd be keeping that all separate. But it's really hard. I get it.
Would you have even wanted to be a professional, make money musician, artist, any of those things, or did you have this by design kind of lifestyle that you now live?
The more you get exposed to all this, and again, I'm sure Al can speak to all this, but you start getting a glimpse of what it's like for people who have gone in front of you and are on higher tiers than you are, and it doesn't get better necessarily.
Yeah,
it just gets different, and there might be more money there, but there are more expenses, more complications, more demands that you probably don't want to have to deal with. So, I think from what I can see already, just our little fun gigs at Zola, are about as rewarding as it can get in the big picture.
Yeah, totally.
In a lot of ways. I'm not saying there aren't other rewards out there that are amazing too, but on the whole, it's sometimes we just don't realize how good we have it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
And be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Because I've certainly seen you in your trajectory, and not to say that you are by any means ungrateful for where you have gotten, but I've seen a shift in your life as you've gotten farther along in your career and done better, made more money. Again, it's not to say that you've ever been ungrateful for any of that, but it's definitely shifted your perspective of what you're doing and why you're doing it, and it's interesting how that all happens.
Yeah, I mean, you change over time and you adjust and adapt, and I think I've known you, Dan, for coming up on 10 years now, maybe even longer, and I think I've always been very interested in that perspective that you've held and that you've executed, which is keeping your art sacred and keeping it away from the almighty dollar and the need to make the almighty dollar. That's something that I've looked at and gone, man, I wish I could figure out a way to do that, so that I could come at art more purely. I still do approach art very purely. I do, for sure. I do my best to not look at the dollar amount or the commas. But at the end of the day, when you make a living doing anything, it's going to make its way into your perception. And I mean, there's definitely moments, like I said, where I can listen to songs and be like, that was me trying to do the thing that made me think I was going to get paid that paycheck that was going to help me forget about, whatever I was on my docket for that time being. But I think you can't pull out of your own perspective of your art and try and look at it from a different angle without, I mean, specifically for me, right? Like I think about your position with painting and with playing bass, and I mean, you joined a band a couple years back, and you went on tour in Europe for months.
Two European tours.
Two European tours in a van with and
8 adult males.
8 adult males.
In one van.
And me and Steve, we've been doing bus tours for what, Steve, coming up on 5 years now? How long you been in a bus with me?
Yeah, over 5 years.
Over 5 years?
Yeah.
If somebody came to you tomorrow and was like, "Hey, bro, I got this tour in a 40 Econoline," what would you say?
I got nothing else to do.
That's not the answer.
That's not the answer. No. No, the answer I want to hear is I got this pretty cush thing with Alan Stone up in the attic, and it doesn't require me living in a Ford Econoline 350 for. But when I heard that you were going to do that trip, Dan, it sent me over the moon. I think because you do that for the joy of experiencing that and playing the music, and when I think of that, I'm like, first of all, it sounds like torture, because my perspective of the thing is just a little bit different. Now, granted, it's not torture, obviously, and I'm being overdramatic.
I think you nailed it. Actually, it really, in very many ways, is torture.
Well, there's probably some people listening to this that might go, "Man, I would kill for that opportunity to play gigs."
Get in a van and go on tour.
You should. I think everybody should experience it without question. But the fact that you were...
I cherish those times, and I won't ever do it again.
Yeah.
Not like that.
Yeah.
But I think the difference between you and a lot of other people that might be listening or doing the same thing is that you didn't do it because you needed to. It wasn't an obligation for you.
You didn't
chose
need to do it. You chose to do it.
Because you apparently just wanted that experience and because you thought it would be fulfilling.
It was a really great season. And I learned so much about so many things, I didn't even know what I was going to learn going, and it was just like, yeah, let's do it. And what an eye opener in so many ways, and I'm so grateful to get all those lessons. But it is a young man's sport for sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
like probably raising a child, like that's another young man's sport.
I mean, I'm in my 30s, bro, and I'm like, I'm too old for this. No, it's definitely touring in a Ford Econoline van is a young man's sport. And I think when I think back about the tours, the first tours that I ever got on, I was so elated, and I'm still excited to tour, and I can't wait for it to come back. I love being out on the road and playing live shows, but yeah, the older you get, the harder it is. Like the more space you want, the more comfort you want, the more joys and niceties you've tasted in life. So you kind of harken back to those. You and I, when we were in Australia, we went to the Melbourne Museum of Modern Art together. And that was super cool. And we're walking through. They have paintings from everybody in there, and we stopped at these Van Goghs. And I'll misquote you, but essentially what you were saying was, look how perfect that is. Now, anybody who's not familiar with Van Gogh, which I am not incredibly knowledgeable about Van Gogh, but his paintings for the time, as I understand it, were very. Not off-putting, but just out there. It was
way ahead of his time.
Way ahead of his time,
yeah.
And you looked at that painting. You said, "Look how good that is." He knew when to stop.
I think it was a Rembrandt that we were looking at.
Oh, maybe it was
because Van Gogh all his stuff was out there. Rembrandt, however, if you look at his body of work, a lot of them are really polished, and those are usually paintings for other people. But I think it was a self-portrait that we were looking at.
Yeah,
and it was much just rougher, and the brush strokes were much broader, and it was just much more economy of and that was because you could tell he's like, it's just for me. That's all I need to do. Otherwise, you're got a commission or somebody wants a portrait done. They want it to look a certain way, and back then they didn't have photography, so you were the de facto photographer back. If you did a portrait back in the day, prior to photography, they wanted it to look polished and everything was blended and smoothed out.
Yeah.
And then you come across this other one, and it's just more of a modern approach to painting. And it was because he was off the clock,
Yeah, I think the idea that stuck with me, though, that you had explained in that moment was, and like I said, I'm probably going to misquote you, but it's like he knew when to stop, right? Like art is this, there's really good artists all over the place. And this happens to me constantly because I kind of have a perfectionist OCD mentality towards music and what I do, or at least I have before, prior to maybe how I am now. But doing something and cultivating that spark and knowing when to let it go and put it out, let people see it. Because you can constantly manipulate and you can constantly redo, and you can always manage to shade this and shave that. And
yeah, this is I see it as a systemic problem, especially it's always has been, I think, because that's that tipping point of, when something's at its greatest and strongest, and it gets covered up or eradicated because you have this compulsion to complete it or to refine it or make it what somebody else wants. Coming back to the Rembrandt paintings, like, well, I know they're not going to like it if I leave it in this state. I better go ahead and start blending and glossing shit over. I mean, so there's that tipping point where something's at its best. Like I drive by and watch people frame a house, and sometimes just the bare studs is the best that house is going to get. And then they start skinning it and covering shit up. And I think it happens in a lot of things. And it's my chief gripe with music today is the tools we have available to us are endless in terms of being able to take any given piece of music and just keep polishing the shit out of it until it's, it's just a sterile piece of shit.
Yep.
And you can do the same thing with a painting, especially now with digital graphics, and you can just, you look at even go to the grocery store and you look at the boxes now, the labeling, and everything's got this clever drop shadow and gradating and all this crap, because they can. And it's, you compare that to the old packaging, it's night and day. It's so much better, so much stronger. And the ability to kind of recognize that difference, that more is not better is critical, but it's becoming kind of a lost concept.
yeah, I think I completely agree with you, and I think there's another art form in knowing when to use those tools and how to use them and how much to use them. Because I'm kind of a tech freak. I love the ease that specific technologies have brought into my life, specifically up here in this attic, video cameras. But I'm also like an old soul and really dig the way that things were put together back when they had to be put together that way, if that makes sense. And so for me, in the cultivation of music or video, if you're leaning too much on the technology, that's when, to me, you lose sight of what you want to convey in that piece. You want the human to shine through. And the human has these what we would call imperfections, but I would call it the perfection. That if you completely alleviate a piece of art of that, a house, a painting, a piece of content, music, video, then yeah, it just becomes robotic and plastic.
Well, as you're talking about that, and you know, that's a big swath of stuff to think about. But what leaps to my mind is process, and this is what we've lost in a lot of ways. You know, if you think about texting and emails, even how they have robbed us of real communication.
Yep.
Like, you know, face to face is one thing, but like back in the day, you know, you write a letter. What I was taught when I was a kid was like, you know, you or if you're writing a paper, even you're going to gather your thoughts on cards or whatever, and then maybe do a first draft based on that, and then kind of organize your thoughts a little more, and then sleep on it and get up the next day and reread it. And think, oh, that's not what I want to say, and that is not how I want to come off. And you'd rewrite it and do a second draft, and then you might do a third draft the next day. And say just what you want to say, then you'd send it out. Fold it up, put it in an envelope, send it to you, or hand it to somebody, or whatever it is. Or we're facing now the opposite of that. Now anyone can just, I equate it to the old prank where you shit in a paper bag, light it on fire, drop it on someone's doorstep and ring the doorbell and run away. Because I'm getting so many texts and emails and things like this where it's just that. It's just this one way.
Just as offensive.
It's a one way, selfish kind of communication. It's like, you know, I'm going to construct this version of things. I'm going to drop it here and then you leave. You know, send it. It's out there, and it's usually done in a moment of kind of agitated state of mind, and it's not good. And what we're missing there is process, and what I think robs art of its authenticity is process as well. If you're able to sit down in a nice, tidy little laptop with some graphics thing, and you got these colors right there, and you're not even your hands dirty. You're just like, and it looks great. It looks super killer. Like, cool. And it just took me half hour, and it's colorful, and I can run through this filter, but it's still a pile of shit. And music's the same way. All these things require a requisite amount of time and focus and energy and reflection. And when you don't give it all that, you're left with something that might look okay. It's McDonald's, you know. It might look okay, it might taste okay initially. That's great, but it's not gonna sustain you.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about how much information is constantly thrown at us throughout the day, and it's over-processed information too, right? Like, we're connected to headlines, really these like sensationalized clickbait headlines that are simply just trying to get us to mine our attention so that they can sell it to advertisers. But it feels like a lot of human existence is connecting to this over-processed experience, from the food we eat to the information that we're given to even, you know, how quick we need to put something out, right? Like, in order to feel like we're in competition with our peers, it has to just be so fast, like, get it. And
it's this urgency to everything.
Right. It feels like there's this urgency. I fall into that a lot too, because I feel like I'm falling behind. People are forgetting about me, you know?
Who are you again?
Yeah, I don't know sometimes. But I don't know. I mean, like, I think maybe I would connect back to that idea of being a good steward of that technology. Because I personally believe that there's, like, technology is great, right? This microphone, this table is a kind of technology. Those shoes are a specific kind of technology, right? But it's, I don't know, there's like this weird balance between what is too much of a technology. It alleviates the human element, right? Like if you have shoes that are have the sole is too thick, you can weaken your heel or weaken your
It's a crutch.
your balance. It's a crutch, right? And I think that we have a tendency to lean on these crutches a little bit too heavy, and it robs us of our humanism a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a great example right here.
Yeah.
It's a extremely powerful tool,
Crazy.
but it could also rob you so much if you don't keep it, in check.
Yeah.
It's they made it so easy for you to let it rule your lives. And going back to the last point I was making about process, the good news is it's so accessible and so inexpensive to obtain these tools to, like, say, record music.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone, any kid can do amazing things on his phone now. But you take the recording process, for instance. That's one of these areas I see where we really are suffering overall because things are too easy, because they're too direct. The necessary gymnastics of reflection and a little more time and rooting these things out and maybe a higher level of scrutiny from the artist standpoint is missing. It's just too easy to pop it out, let it go, do the next one, and that's what I see happening. Is it's like there's just not enough time spent with anything to really get it to its greatest place.
Mm. Do you think that is simply a shadow of the expanse of distraction that's come about in the last?
Oh yeah, it's all. I mean, it's hard to separate any of this out. It's our culture. We've got several generations now who had it so easy and expect it to be that way. And that's why I think we're experiencing this kind of pushback with our current crisis. Is like we've got 2-3 generations who've never had to face adversity, never had to pivot, never had to change their MO. And, and it's this kind of insurance mentality. Well, I buy an insurance policy, then I'm covered. Even if bad shit happens to me, I'll be covered. It's like, no, bad shit will happen. It may affect you. You might have to change your game up. You might have to rethink things a little bit or a lot. And I think that is kind of what we're facing right now. Just a whole country full of kind of soft people who even, you could talk to your dad and it's like, well, I've never had to deal with this either. And I feel like that's where we're at right now with just so many people who haven't experienced having to change anything up.
Yeah, to switch it up. It's interesting with the phone as you pick it up. My son is approaching 2, and technology and screens is like a real thing, meaning it's a what I would call an obstacle, and trying to maneuver his life to have a good relationship with these technologies has been a pretty interesting subject, specifically between me and Taz. And I'm curious that you might know a little bit of this history, but as you're talking, Dan, and we're talking about cars earlier, I don't know when the first combustion engine vehicle was released to the public, but late 1800s? Am I kind of rough there?
Yeah, early 1900s commercially.
Early 1900s commercially. Okay, so they were released as a private company brought these to the public. At some point, the government said you can't drive one of these things until you're 16.
Yeah.
I don't know the history of it, but I'm curious to know why that same thing hasn't even been talked about with phones.
Because there's such a new tech. Well, I guess was that decision made right away when the?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know the history of it, but I feel.
I mean, you're not running anyone over with a phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, but look at the shit that is happening because of the ability to like garbage fire on public forums with the internet. Like it's interesting how and I don't know if it's been intentional. I would imagine that private companies are like, we want everybody to be able to have one of these, right? But
Hell yeah.
me and Taz have trying to figure out exactly how to phrase and
Regulate.
this
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
because we know that. I mean, he's already fine. Like he knows about it.
Yeah.
He's already infatuated with the screen, with the phone. If we've got it nearby, he's gonna find it. He's gonna pick it up and try to look at it, right? Like you can't not. But the other day I was like, well, why don't we approach it like we would driving? I never had any qualms about getting behind the seat of a car when I was 12 years old. Like, it wasn't like my dad, when I was 12, had to pry me away from the driver's seat of a car. Like, it was just, it made sense that as a 12-year-old, I was not old enough to drive a car.
Not equipped.
Why don't we have that same ideology with phones with our children?
They're just not one and the same, man. They're just two completely different things. And you didn't grow up with phones in your life when you were born to recognize what that might be like for you if you were 4, 5, 6, 9, 12.
Right,
And
okay.
being like,
I think what Al was getting at initially, if I got you correctly, is like with any emerging technology, be it automobile or the internet,
A
or
lawnmower.
whatever, a lawnmower. What? Yeah, I mean, there's going to be an arc, and at some point in that arc, there will probably be a point where they instill some regulation. Like I'm sure, I mean, they were a horseless carriage, but they were basically cars, and they probably just were out there like buggies with horses, and they became so prevalent, and probably collisions were happening, and people were dying a little more than they would with horse-drawn buggies, so they probably felt the need to do that. And I think, yeah, I don't know. It makes me okay being not being a parent right now because I don't know what I would do with a child right now.
same.
Like, wow.
Well, you got to feed them.
Yeah.
That's one major thing that
What?
I went a few days without feeding mine, and that apparently was not kind of frowned upon in my neighborhood. No,
I agree with you, by the way, just so you know.
no, I know. I'm just it's an interesting thought process personally because it's an open canvas right now, right? Like
Yeah.
what I do today and how I speak to Rudy, how I the way that I frame the phone or the internet or the screen or the TV to him matters, right? Because naturally he's going to have friends whose parents are just like, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? PlayStation for 20 hours a day, no problem. But I personally would like to instill a regulatory
Balance.
in him. And I don't know personally how to do it. One, because I was the young kid that would go over to my friend's house who had cable, and I would watch it for 6 hours.
R-rated movies.
Like, couldn't stop. My best buds would be like, are we going to go out and play? Do anything? No, bro. What are you talking about? You got Prime Star, son. I'm staying here. I'm watching Nicole Kidman, Sandra Bullock. Boy, I'm watching Skinamax.
Yeah.
Those two things might have coincided with puberty too, which is, that's a whole nother gamut. But it's interesting to me. I was thinking about the other day with Taz. I was like, why don't we just frame it like you would a car? Like you're not gonna be able to drive a car till you're 16, kid. Like it's just not, because Rudy is just as infatuated with the driver's seat as he is a phone.
Right.
And it's like whatever we do, whatever he sees his folks do and his parents do, he wants to emulate.
Which is natural.
Seemingly natural.
Yeah.
Right.
I think my mother nailed it in this regard because I grew up coming out of at some point my folks divorced. That point was about 10 years old, and it was a shit show for a while. But my mother figured out, like, she just, despite everything else, she would reinforce one point, like, look, you're on your own. We were all very independent, even when we didn't want to be. But she said, look, here's the deal. If you do this, then that. If you go out and sleep with a girl, great. If you get her pregnant, here's what your life's going to look like. If you go out and get loaded and try to drive home, probably not a good result. And she just basically, said, yeah, I can't stop you from doing this. I can't keep you from being exposed to all kinds of things. But what I can do is prepare you with some education and show you some likely outcomes if you go down that path. And I think maybe that's your best bet with Rivety, is just to try to start explaining to him everything has a price.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the parenting skills that I inherited came from this like fundamental authoritarian place.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the parent and what I say goes, sort of thing. And I don't remember too many scenarios where it was explained to me. Like, just recently, it was in my late 20s that somebody explained to me why you need to be honest. He said, the reason why you're honest is because if you're dishonest, you are given the unfortunate perception that everybody is being dishonest to you. And you cannot operate in a community thinking that everybody is constantly lying to you. If you are not a person who is always honest, you don't know who you can trust as easy as somebody who is always honest. I thought, shit, man, I wish I would have been explained that, right? I was honest when it was helpful to me, but I was relatively dishonest also as a youngster because, that's what I thought was going to be the best case scenario for me. But yet in my adult life, I'm constantly on the tip of like, what are you trying to get from me here? Right? Because I've opened up that door of dishonesty. And I think life has that, right? Like, why are you kind to others? Why do you not shout? Why are you not the bolstery, like shouting? No, because we operate in communities. We operate as a social being. And if you want to be set up to live as best you possibly can, you need to be a good playmate. You need to listen to others. Why? Because that's going to better your chances at like doing well in life. And that was kind of never explained to me. It was always just like, you do it because, either God told you or I say so. And now I'm sure there was plenty of times where it was explained to me and I just wasn't listening. But it's funny how we've gotten into the parenting topic with two people who don't have kids.
We're not having a parenting topic.
Three people. I'm the only one. I'm hogging the conversation.
I may not have kids, but I do plenty of parenting.
That's true.
Trust me.
You have plenty of nieces and nephews, as I would call it.
Grown adults that just,
Wink, wink.
Wink, wink, all of us.
I think also just like despite whatever you're going through or however you're feeling like you're going to be educating whoever is around you, it completely depends on your life experience and how that educates you for you to understand how to be an example for the people that you're trying to touch and cultivate life with. If I don't have kids, I don't know if I will. I can't speak to that experience at all. But we're not going to change the rules to society. They're going to continue to technology is going to continue to get crazier. We're going to continue to get more frustrated by the process continuing to get less and less and less important. And all we can do is try to cultivate the life that we want to cultivate and try to be the best example to the people that matter to us. And the only way that we can do that is by trying to just be that thing for ourselves, I think. What else can we do? Because again, none of the things that we're talking about having frustration surrounding are going to change on our accord.
Well, I would agree and disagree with that. I think that there's plenty of things that have changed in our lifetime that the perception around them were completely different. Smoking, right? Dan, you lived in a day and age where people smoked this far away from you. They smoked cigarettes in a car with closed windows, smoked cigarettes on airplanes.
Yeah.
And you're like a leper now if you're smoking cigarettes. Like, you have to go out 40 feet from the building. You got to tuck it underneath your trench coat. Like, the perception around smoking cigarettes has completely changed in our lifetime. What does that come from? It's come from communal understanding and like the herd understanding of something, right? And so I do think that there is power in knowledge, and if you continue to discuss and communicate about those things, change can happen for sure. But I agree with you. It's a little bit of both. There's certain things in our life that we're just not going to change until, like, spin your tires in the mud trying to convince people that, like, no, you need to have a real drummer. You got to have a real drummer on the track or it's not a song, you know?
Well, it's just finding balance with all of the things that are coming into our lives and trying to figure out a way to kind of, you know, put it all together and say, okay, cool. Like yes, technology is increasing and we're getting more and more and more and more, and things are more addings, more additional pieces on the music, and everything's being turned into this digital piece of shit. What happened to just like this organic, raw piece of art?
Right.
It's all going to seek its own level. I mean, I'm sure these same conversations are happening with the advent of the steam engine, with radio,
course,
with the television, with the automobile,
The
all this
written
stuff.
language.
Everything comes at a price, and you know, and everything's.
It's just like doing your best to control the undeniable narrative that's coming anyways. Like Alan trying to focus Rudy. If he's on the iPad on the screen, he's only allowed to use an art app or a game that's like educational. It's not just like there to kill time for him. It's like, this is a tool if it entertains you, but you have to be proactive and productive on that tool.
Totally.
Steve, will you be my dad?
How can I be the dad of my dad?
It's so funny. What's funny too about that, that's great wisdom, Steve, is I also sense and understand totally the desire to put the kid in front of the screen.
Oh, yeah.
I can't imagine, man.
Being at a restaurant, I used to just look down my nose at parents who would just hand the kid the phone. But when first and foremost, as a parent, like, you don't get a break, right? There's no breaks for parenting.
Don't know how you do it.
And me and Taz, we took Rudy to Coeur d'Alene the other day. We had like a little family day. And we went to breakfast in the morning, and homie was just on one, like just going for it. And it took every inch of my being not to just give him my phone and turn on a video that I knew he would sit there quietly and watch. And so shout outs, and grace to any parent who's listening to this, who's, had to pull that card before, because I completely understand it. But man, what an interesting obstacle to have to navigate. I mean, because personally, right, Dan, when did you first start driving?
Well, dude, I was in the junkyard.
7.
I don't care. When did you first start driving?
7.
7. My dad the same. My dad grew up on a farm. He was driving vehicles when he was 8, 9 years old. Yeah. Do you think that would ever happen today?
Just in different parts of the world, sure.
I mean, maybe different parts of the world, but you get my idea.
Not
right?
as much as it used to.
Not as much as it used to. Like the perception around things have changed, right? And I think that the perception around technology and phones and the internet has to change. Like, we are growing up in the adolescent stage of every piece of information ever gathered, ever in humanity's history is right at your fingertips. Like, we are in the prepubescent, I just got my first ball hair stage of that happening. Yeah. And there has to be some evolution to the regulation.
Well, it's an interesting point you raised, because you started this off with driving.
Yeah.
And, and I see a whole generation of my nieces and nephews. They really don't give two shits about driving or a car, because they don't. They not like we did, because just in one generation, it just shifted from like your automobile was it was everything. In one steel box, you had your identity, your status, your hopes, and and all the things that were going to happen because of this car, and the things you could do and places you could go. Well, all of that is being taken care of by this now.
Wow, that's such an interesting point.
And that, cars that people can take or leave them. It's just, and it's reflected in the kind of the style and what's available now is it's just transportation now. It's an appliance. It's disposable. It's just a crappy little microwave that it heats your food up and whatever, it gets me to point B. But when you get to point B, you're probably going to be on someone else's computer, or I don't know. I mean, along with the car, but what really amazes me is I don't see them as interested in sex even as our generation was. It's just
the phone's probably taking care of that for them too.
Probably. It's a lot easier and it's a lot safer. And but man, I mean, these are two of the big things I see. Huge shifts in one generation. And I don't know that maybe we were freaks and we were too involved in cars and sex, and now it's normalized, or are we just being kind of normal people, and now it's just such a neutered world now in this regard. I don't know, but I and you guys help me out. What do you guys see?
Well, I don't have young teenagers in my life. I don't know any, I can think of one or two, but I don't know them that well. I think it will present itself a little bit more when my nephews are getting to that age.
Yeah.
But also my siblings are really good at regulating those things.
Yeah.
They're very good at regulating screen time and television, and
so they say things like, when you're 16, you're gonna get a license and a car, and you're gonna go out there and get with chicks.
yeah, right.
That's the way it's gonna be. I don't want to hear another word about it.
You're gonna be back by midnight with a girl.
You're gonna stay out till 3 tonight.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm not around young kids like that age. 11 to 16. I'm not that's a gap in age that I'm just not presented with or around.
Yeah, but the crazy thing is you don't have to be around young kids to understand the effects of what's happening. I can only speak for myself in what my experience is with that stuff. And those exact same things, like porn and being able to call a car to get picked up with, and do everything that I do, texting, DMing, social media, and my somehow inherent interest in just constantly looking at it and being absorbed by it is completely distracting me, more so than I have ever felt distracted in my entire life. And I will be the first to admit that I am a complete product of my own device. And it scares the shit out of me. And as much as I want to be a good example for myself, I catch myself all the time. All the time. I catch myself being around you and around other people, just being on my phone. And then it's just then you judge yourself, and then you go right back to it. And you even wake up in the morning. I wake up in the fucking morning and I tell myself, you can't look at your phone for the first 20 minutes if we wake up.
Good luck.
You wake up and you're going to sit there and you're going to breathe and you're going to do some meditations. Do not look at your device. Without question. Every single morning, even when I'm just Julian, just don't. Okay, what's going on? And then I just sit there and I fucking drop it on my face, and it hurts. It's just it's just a sign. It's hurting you physically now.
Have you guys seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a scene in there where, remember, Billy is one of the inmates, and Jack's talking to him, and Jack learns that Billy is in there voluntarily.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah,
and he
yeah,
says,
yeah.
It's Billy, what are you doing? You ought to be out driving around in a convertible, bird dogging chicks and banging beaver or something like that. And it's
bird dogging, bro. I love it.
Yeah. It's and that's kind of how I feel when I see this. It's what you guys are missing out on so much just because
totally
it's cheap, safe, and easy, and you don't get dirty, and I think that's what's missing. Because I mentioned that earlier, you can make a painting without even getting your fucking hands dirty, and you can have a sexual experience without getting dirty or venereal disease, and you can it's safe, but it doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah,
really,
Yeah, I mean I was watching a show called, I think it was Alone. It's this show, they put a bunch of these survivalists out in the middle of nowhere, and they give them a couple tools.
I think everyone knows what Alone is.
Really?
I think so.
Okay. Jules, do you know?
I do know. I did. You showed
Sorry,
me.
I stand corrected.
No, I knew it. He showed me.
And I've been kind of infatuated with the idea of it because, right, this is how our ancestors survived less than 500 years ago, and they didn't have Gore-Tex. They didn't have fire starter. The people that we came from were full-on hard-ass people, and if we have a relative or a friend that we think has had to survive outside in the elements for one single night, we call the authorities. We're incredibly worried about them. Whereas we used to be that close and connected to nature that it was no problem, right? Like that's just how we survived. And I think that the one quote from that show that I took away from was one of the guys was like, we've sacrificed a lot for convenience. We have sacrificed a lot of our humanity for convenience. I feel like that all the time. With that same thing, with this device and the convenience that we've brought into our life, we've given up a lot of ability to live closer to the things that satiate us. Actually, it's definitely an interesting thought experience.
That's all technology. That's why they have the wheel. All technology ever created has been for human convenience.
Totally, but there is what I guess my point is there's a level of technology that doesn't override humanism. Like when you pick up a wheelbarrow, you're still connected to some aspect of the weight of that thing.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas the technology that we utilize to like make a song, bro, I've been in sessions with people who couldn't play a note on any instrument, couldn't sing a single note in pitch, and they had platinum records on the wall. And now it doesn't matter, I guess, because who's to say who's the musician and who's not? What is music, right? Like if you want to get meta about that shit. But there is something involved in the convenience of technology that pulls the human out of the relationship altogether, where the computer is doing everything, where the technology is doing everything. And I think that I wrote a song about it. This song called Fake Future on my record Radius is all about humans, the singularity, essentially, right? That idea that Kurzweil came up with. I don't know if it was specifically him, but he's kind of credited for it, where the next stage in human evolution will be the melding of technology. And whether that's a good thing or not, I think we're already kind of there, but it's definitely interesting to talk about.
Yeah, I think about trolling when you say stuff like that, because it's like the people that troll people and just diss them on the internet, they would never say that to someone's face. They've never been punched in the face, and they've never punched anyone in the face. And it's a real human element of like the emotion you're trying to give someone to hurt somebody really, and you're just doing it in this safe, ambiguous net.
Yeah.
It's gross.
It's so gross.
And it's the same dynamic, Steve, as what I mentioned initially about the texting and emails. It's when you get behind the wheel of your car, I become a complete dick. I know I am. I would never treat someone face to face like I do, like when I get behind the wheel. And I'm working on that, and I've gotten a lot better. But I recognize it, and this happens on the wholesale on the internet now. It's just it's taking all the humanity away.
Well, I think that it's tough to go back and think about the splits and the whys in human evolution, but communication is a fully faceted dimensional exchange. It should be, at least, right? When you talk to somebody and you're in the same room as them, you're not only feeling their body language, I was listening to something recently that they can actually measure heart rhythm, and that our hearts can measure each other's rhythms specifically in the same room.
I've been doing that 100% since we sat down.
Yes. I
How's it
have a
working?
pacemaker, so I'm tricking you. But there's so many different dimensions of communication that happen in real time when you're standing next to somebody. And we're now communicating so much more frequently on a single dimensional platform, which is like the written word. And a lot of the written word through text, through email is like so, because we're trying to do so many things so fast. Man, I've read back on text messages that I've sent, and I'm like, I can interpret that 45 different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know how the hell the person who got it interpreted it.
So fragmented.
It's at least something that we can talk about, I think, and go, we should be careful. We should be a little bit more careful. I feel like we're in the day and age, like, say cars started hitting the road and coming out to the public in the early 1900s. I feel like it's like 1915.
And it's time.
And people are like, yeah, these cars are going like 55 miles an hour now on gravel roads, and maybe we should think about seatbelts and who's
Safety
behind
glass.
the wheel, safety glass.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
But whose responsibility is it besides our own personal responsibility to try and regulate that with ourselves?
yeah,
Like,
it's
right?
Yeah.
it's all of that. It's us.
You don't want Rudy hitting 6 years old and accessing the dark web. I mean, that's not, you know.
No, you don't. I mean, I think personal responsibility is the ultimate way.
Right.
I think that like trying to lean on some governing faction to set rules and to put them in place, to personally, I don't enjoy that. I think that we need it for sure, that we need some aspect of regulation happening, but I believe personal responsibility is the best. And how do I personally determine what that personal responsibility is through talking to people who I trust and I respect and I consider their perspective. And so I think the more you talk about it, like the better you're going to be able to self-regulate. Dan, your perspective is and dimension of being able to see things is completely different from mine because your experience is different. Jules, you're the same. Steve, you're the same. And so communicating and opening up that exchange to people you trust and care about, I think, is always a really beneficial thing to do.
You know, all this talk about communication, and I just want to make one little quick point here. It was a statement from a guy named Bud Hazel at Gonzaga University. I was a business major, and I had to take this communications course. And day one, he comes in and he goes, look, if you don't remember anything else from this class, remember this. And I do. I remember exactly what he said verbatim. He said, you know, it was a communications course, and he said, write to communicate, not to impress. And I've found in my life a direct correlation with, you know, paint. That was, you know, with painting, we talked about authenticity at the top of this segment about, you know, what's real, what's really you, what isn't, you know. And if you're trying to impress somebody, that's not real. That's not communicating who you really are. That's just flexing muscles. So, you know, we're talking about these different forms of communication and how they aren't really who we are, you know, being shitty to someone or being, what's the word you use, Steve?
Troll.
Yeah. You used another descriptor there. It was, can you roll that back and tell me what it was? But, you know, if you're really real with yourself and you think about what it is that you really want to say and boil it down and then relay that, that's ideal, but that takes a minute. And I think you can carry that same philosophy into writing a song or painting a painting or even building a house. I'll say it, there's a house that's been being built as we've been building this little cabin down here, kind of the same, except it's on steroids. And I happen to know from talking to the builder that the owners say, and I've got actually an architect friend who's the same way. So many clients come to this and say, we want to build the biggest thing because we want people to know we're rich or we want to be impressive. And this is, I think, what happens in a lot of areas in our lives. People want to impress each other. They want to be impressive. They want to be bigger than they are. And I think you have to watch out for that because it probably doesn't lead to anything good.
Well, what's interesting is it never stops.
It's a bottomless pit.
It's a bottomless pit. Like where it leads is endless. Like, because you're never going to impress enough people in order to impress yourself.
And that's that's the same dynamic at work on the internet, and, all these idealized realities or perceived realities of someone else's existence, and you're constantly, chasing that rabbit around the track, and you'll never catch it. It's exhausting.
Well, what's actually impressive to me, Dan, is the conversations that we always wind up having with you, because you kind of put our brains into another area that kind of requires us to beg the question of why are we doing what we're doing, and where does that really come from? And you seem to have, although you might disagree, a really, really strong handle on the way that you operate your life and the things that you do to keep yourself creatively fulfilled and just satiated in your life as a person. And I think I can speak for all three of us when I say, like, we really admire the shit out of you, man. And like,
thanks.
I don't know who else is a mentor of this guy besides you. And like, ever since the day one of meeting you, he's like, man, this guy is insane, dude. And it speaks huge volumes of you to say that this guy has a mentor, because I never knew that he could or did until he started speaking of you.
Well, let me tell you a quick little story,
Please,
if I may. And it was probably 12 years ago. I had a friend of mine getting married, and he goes, "Hey, come down tonight to the Big Dipper. There's this guy playing. I think he's awesome, And it was Alan Stone, and so I came down and listened, and I was like, man, blown away. And then so we met shortly after that, and then Alan was slated to play my friend's wedding, and I was just starting out playing bass, getting around town and gigging a little bit, and and I said, you know what? If he's just going to play solo, I'll come out and play bass with him. And I think he might have brought that up to Al, and Al wasn't really too keen on the idea, apparently, because it didn't happen. But I ended up giving Alan a ride.
Cannot confirm or deny that.
I was like, who's this fucking clown who's going to play bass with me? And then so I ended up taking Al to the airport. I'm condensing all this down, and then so we kind of chatted a little bit on the way, but it was. I think he was still uncomfortable because I had a bass guitar in the back of the rig. And so anyway, the next time I recall meeting Al was, we're playing down at Zola on a Thursday night or something, and in rocks Al with his entire band after a gig. And it's like, hey, where's it? South by Southwest, maybe the next time I saw you.
I think we had hung out after you played at Zola one night. We had played over at the Big Dipper, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And then after that, it was South by.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, so we kind of, and then that night that you hung out, I think you pulled me aside and said, dude, when I make it, I want you to build my house. Mm. And, and so to kind of fast forward and come back around to all this, to what you were saying, Julian, and thank you both. This, people say, do anything fun this week? And I was like, well, fuck, nothing I do isn't fun. I mean, if it's not fun, I'm not doing it. If it's not really what I want to be doing, I don't have to anymore, So all this to say, this is all part of my evil plan, you see, because I feel, 100% responsible, even though that's not true. I feel 100% responsible for Al being in Spokane and setting up camp here. I think slowing down to this COVID thing has been an eye-opener, but in a good way. We've had a few conversations about you maybe not touring as much and maybe finding a way to be with your family more, still do the music, but not hit it so hard. And can you make all that work? And maybe exploring other ways to make a buck. And again, all this to say that this is a dream come true for me to be hanging up here with 4 or 3 cool cats on the weekly basis and doing creative things and exploring what the future looks like. This is exactly what I want to be doing, and wherever that leads is great, or if it doesn't lead to anything else, that's great too. But this, I don't think you should try to fill in too many blanks.
Yeah.
I leave the discovery as kind of the best part about it. It's like, where will this lead? I don't know.
Yeah.
But
it's nice to have somebody like you to follow the example of in that regard.
So the full circle is, in some weird twisted world, fate has got me playing bass with Alan Stone somehow.
Yeah, man. You know what's the most impressive thing about all that shit is that you just I figured you'd been playing bass for 30 years.
No, man.
What have you been playing bass for, like 6 years or something?
I started about 2001, I think. Started up again. I played for a minute in high school, but I didn't know anything about anything, so it doesn't really count.
That's funny. The full circle is that I'm finally playing bass with you.
I was gonna get you, sucker.
Evil planned.
That's great. I think
awesome.
one, you are absolutely 100% responsible for us being in Spokane. It was because of you bringing me out here, showing me this space, and then calling my wife and going, "Hey, I kind of need somebody to help me with this project I got."
Whatever it takes, man, I'll do it.
And she took a job from you, and her and Aaron and the small crew of merry men that you've assembled, it took them throwing this property together to get me to move out of the cabin in Chihuahua that I was posted up in for many years.
And then the field trip.
Field
Get that
trip.
cooking. Yeah.
There's been a ton of creative projects that we've been able to do together that have, I think for me, I feel more excited today about
We got Steve and Laura out here now.
Steve and Laura. We captured them.
Awesome.
We kidnapped them. We kidnapped Julian.
It's a dream come true.
We're kidnapping
Seriously,
them one by
Steve.
one, dude. We're picking them off, baby. We're picking them off.
I'll tell you what,
laugh.
Dan. When I make it, you can build my house too, brother. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Deal. I'm down.
I just want to thank you, Dan, for your openness to shedding wisdom to three knuckleheads like us, and for the limitless inclusiveness that you seem to exude in your life with the people that manage to get inside your orbit. I know that all three of us really appreciate your hospitality and your kindness and including us in this crazy universe that you've managed to find yourself in.
Thanks, Dad.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan.
I can't wait to see where we are a year from now.
Me too.
It's gonna be awesome, whatever it is, wherever it is.
It's going to be awesome. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. Thanks for being
Yeah.
on the pod.
Thank you, Dan.
It's over when I say it's over.
Okay.
It's true.
this
I'm
is-
the
it is
senior
kinda
member
true.
here.
This
It's
is
true.
version
It's-
4 of the podcast.
Yeah. If
and
you like
this
this
was the best
podcast,
one.
it's because of Dan Spalding.
This is
That's
over
how we do
right
this.
now. Not another word. Over. Kidding.
Thanks,
That was
Dan.
great. Thank you, Dan.
Love you, man.
Love
Love
you,
you
dude.
guys. All right.
Oh, Boo Boo, did you just make it to the end of the video? Yes, you did. Do you want to see more videos just like this one? Do you?
Well, then head over to patreon.com/live at the lodge, where you can support the How Goods of this podcast, as well as the entire Live at the Lodge family.
Yep. Yeah, you're going to get exclusive merch, personalized shout-out videos. Me and Jules, we're going to show up at your house and baptize your nephew, huh? Check it out, patreon.com/live at the lodge.